Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Oh my gosh, Dr. Greg Sanchez with Home Instead Senior Care here in Pasadena and Monrovia. We're at 200 East Del Mar, Suite 350 here in Pasadena, and 899 West Foothill in Monrovia. What I would like to do is, I guess, as Sam goes ahead and gets our video set up correctly, we're just I'm just talking here to make sure that all the bells and whistles of our Insta/Facebook live event today are getting ready to work. So bear with us here as we get through some of these technical things. Um, yeah, lots to talk about today. Really special guest. I hope you guys are excited as much as I am because we've got a celebrity in our midst here. So, one second. Okay. So, alrighty then. So, I think we will go ahead and get started. So, as many of you know already, we have our uh, Kickstart Your Healthcare Career Through Caregiving program or series here at Home Instead. We've had conversations with several different folks in many types of different jobs, but everyone has the same thing in common, and that is that we all started as family caregivers. So a quick background. So we started off the series with me as a family caregiver, caring for my grandparents, and then moving on from there and becoming an owner of Home Instead. We've had Brenda Cornell, who was a caregiver working her way through home care and then becoming an LVN. We had Isabella Garcia, an RN who started off as a caregiver. Christine Strong, who was our last one, who was actually a case manager here at Home Instead, again, starting off as a caregiver. And I'd love to introduce our celebrity today. He also started off as a family caregiver and is now has a successful podcast called Fading Memories, going on 4 years strong. I'd like to introduce all of you to Miss Jennifer Fink. Jennifer, are you online there?
Yep, I'm here.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on our live event. This is the first time that we're actually talking, but I know that you've been working with my staff to go ahead and get ready for this event. So thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing your story about how caregiving took you from caring for your loved ones and then ultimately sharing your experiences through your podcast, Fading Memories. So if you'd like, we can go ahead and start by just having you introduce yourself and giving us a little bit of background about yourself.
Okay, well, again, my name is Jennifer. I'm in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. I know you guys are on the opposite end of the state. And my mom had Alzheimer's for 20 years. And most of that time, my dad was her caregiver. He did not really ask or accept help. And when he ended up on hospice with memory issues at the end of 2016. He had a kidney
Mm-hmm.
transplant and it was failing, and he did not want to go back on dialysis, and the toxins from the failing kidneys just basically poisoned his brain. So overnight, like many family caregivers find themselves, I had two parents with cognitive issues and kind of clueless how to deal with my mom because I did not do it on a daily basis. And I was not really aware of how far along she was. I mean, I knew it'd been a long journey. It wasn't like I was out of the loop, but the day to day activities, just getting her in and out of the shower, getting her from point A to point B, and she'd ask questions about my dad, and then she'd repeat them, and it was like, and because all of this stuff literally happened overnight, it was just a nightmare. So my father passed away in March of 2017, and my sister and I became obviously responsible for our mom. And being the oldest, I'm sure a lot of people can relate. I ended up taking kind of the lead role. My daughter is also 14 years older than my niece, and she's the middle of the three grandchildren. So my daughter had just turned 25 and moved out. My sister still had kids in school, so it was kind of a normal thing. In
Mm-hmm.
trying to find ways to have good visits, well, because I was still working and my sister had school age kids and was working full time, it only made sense to put her in a memory care residence.
Yeah.
And the biggest reason that we chose that, because of course my mom's like, I don't want to be a burden on you girls, and I want to live in my home forever. And we never had a conversation how either one of those two things could happen, which leads me into part of the reason that I started the podcast. But I would go and visit her and she'd ask me the same question over and over. And after about 20, 30 minutes, I'm like, how bad for my brain is it if I smash my head into this wall, because I can't take this.
Oh my
So,
God.
like most people, I read books, I did deep internet research, and didn't come up with answers that worked for my mom or me. I'm not sure which one of us was failing the suggestions. And one day I was at the gym and I was like, duh, I listened to a podcast on the way to the gym. Back in those days when we went to gyms. I should go home
Mm-hmm.
because I'm older and I need glasses to read tiny little things on my phone. I should find a podcast for Alzheimer's caregivers. And this was late 2017. I went home, searched on Apple Podcast, and there was literally one. I'm like, okay, great. At least there's one. And it really wasn't my cup of tea, which, it's not any disrespect to this person's podcast. They've been around a very long time, doing a good job. It just wasn't for me, That's life. Being
Mm-hmm.
an entrepreneur, because I used to be a professional portrait photographer until COVID, I just decided, what the heck? I'll start my own podcast. I have a lot of things to tell people. And I quickly learned I had a lot less knowledge than I thought, which I'm sure most family caregivers can relate to. So that's kind of how I
Mm-hmm.
got to May of 2018 when I launched Fading Memories podcast. And that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last 3+ years. I just started season 4, so.
Wow, that is incredible. I mean, I think it's absolutely amazing that you took the initiative there, because there was a lack of resources that really called to you or resonated with you. So, bravo to you for bringing that. And I know that in my experience as a family caregiver, you're absolutely right. There are just so many things that we're just doing on a day to day, and we're basically thrown into the deep end of the swimming pool and said swim, and it's really hard to go ahead and take the time to really research things that would make our lives a lot easier as family caregivers. So wow, that's awesome that you're again going into season 4. That's just amazing. I really, really am happy for you. I think one of the things that a lot of the listeners here, and I'm assuming that a lot of your podcast listeners are always wondering, what tips do you have what would be like your top 3 tips that you would give to a family caregiver who's just started working with a loved one who has Alzheimer's?
Get help. Put together your care team. And a lot of people, I'm sure, are out there going, oh, but my parent or my spouse or whatever, my loved one, they don't want strangers in their home. I got you covered. I learned this from another podcaster whose family I like to hold up as the blueprint how we should all do this. And I've adapted it a little bit. But what I always suggest for people who have a loved one that's newly diagnosed, or you're looking at them and you're going, this is not normal memory loss.
Mm-hmm.
Write down everything you need to get accomplished during the day. Meals, cleaning, appointments, call it insurance companies, whatever it is you need to do, write it down. Do that for obviously a week. Then write down the things that you need to get done that don't happen every day. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
doctor's appointments. I don't know, maybe you're not like my household and you don't go to the grocery store nearly every day. Write down those things and let it marinate for a while. And while the to-do list is marinating and you're making sure you haven't forgotten anything, write down all the people that you know that would probably be willing to help. And when you're writing down, you've got Jennifer and you've got John and you've got Laura and Paul, write down what you think their strong suit is. Me cannot stand calling banks, insurance companies, like 30 seconds on hold, and I'm just it's just not my thing. I don't know why. My husband was in banking for 20 years. He is a real estate broker. He was a real estate broker during the real estate crisis 10 or so years ago, when you had to call a bank and be on hold for hours just to get, transactions completed. And I would have lost my hair because I would have been ripping it out. So for us, he made all those phone calls. And when the insurance company or whomever realized, whoa, wait a minute, we're not supposed to be talking to this guy. He doesn't have the power of attorney, which we're going to get to in a second.
Yeah.
Then he would just put it on speakerphone and we'd talk to the person together. Of course, that always caused a little hiccup because they didn't really want to do that. And, I just had to assure them that that was the best way forward. So write down people's strong suit. Maybe you've got somebody like me. I like to cook. I like to bake. Maybe there's a teenager that needs some extra cash who can take care of the yard. And now you've got a list. Here's the stuff that needs to get done. Here's the people I know, out of state, out of town people. Maybe they can do the phone calls. Maybe they can set up banking online and all that stuff. When somebody says, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear your mother's got Alzheimer's. Is there anything I can do to help? You are now prepared to give them a logical, reasonable answer instead of like, oh, I appreciate it so much, but I'll let you know. We never do that. So that's tip number one. The second one is to make sure that you have all of the legal documents in place. Again, not my favorite thing to do, but I know caregivers whose family member has never let them take over. Now they're in advanced Alzheimer's, and it's just a nightmare. Like, she can't really do anything legally for her loved one, but she needs to, and it's a mess. And she's gotten some very bad advice. It's a whole thing. But if you talk to them early on, when they're first diagnosed or you first start realizing there's a problem, then they can be a part of the solution instead of you doing something to them, because a lot of people have an issue with that. So that's my top two. And then,
Excellent.
Thank you. And the bringing in people that you know and bringing in people that are going to help you instead of handle your loved one also takes care of a lot of the privacy, especially if it's a spouse, older adults taking care of each other. You might not want somebody coming in and helping your wife shower. That might not be something that you're comfortable with. But if somebody else is taking care of the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, the yard, the making of the appointments, getting groceries, now you've got much more bandwidth to take care of those personal things that might be more difficult for somebody that's even for family, but definitely more of a struggle for a hired care person that you don't have a relationship with.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I just want to kind of summarize, because I think your tips are really important, especially tips 2 and 3. And I want to highlight tip 1 in a second. But tip number 2, discussing early on, because you're absolutely right. The more the senior or the loved one in question feels like they're a part of the solution, you definitely get a lot more buy-in especially when it comes to the financial component of it. So that's a great one right there. And then number 3 is really, when we think about it as family caregivers, and I'm sure you're going to talk about caregiver burnout shortly, respite care for yourself. Respite care is not just for the loved one, it's for you, because we need, as family caregivers, as I've learned, as my mother's learned, taking care of my 96 and 97-year-old grandparents. We need to listen to our bodies, because if we're not well, then we're not going to be good family caregivers. But I'd like to touch back on tip number one, because I think that's one that really, that I want to really get your feedback on, which is really about how did you get to have strangers get into the home? How were you able to help support you?
Well, we didn't
Yeah.
have a lot of choice. Well, because my dad, well, it's the first probably 3-ish weeks, my dad was in the hospital for 32 days. And we literally bounced my mom between my house and my sister's house and her sister, who took care of their mom who had vascular dementia, and the dog, the super overweight poodle. My mom and the poor dog got bounced around, which we all know. First off, it'd be stressful if my husband was in the hospital and I was going between my home and my daughter's home and a third party's home, so I only have one kid. That's stressful enough, but now if I've got a cognitive impairment and I don't really understand what the heck's going on, you can just imagine, the longer that went on, the less it was easy to deal with my mom. And like I said, she was already pretty late term Alzheimer's, and it was just ugly for everybody. So, you know how hospitals are. They kept threatening to wheel my dad out to the parking lot. I think they really wanted to get rid of him because he was a huge problem. He didn't realize what was going on. And so he just kept fighting with him. It was ugly every direction you turned. So they were like, okay, well, we're releasing him to, I think it was today, or it was like less than 24 hours. And I was like, oh, no, you're not, because I got to get stuff put together. So I literally had to find in-home care in 24 hours.
Oh, my God.
Thank God there was not some sort of nightmare, because none of my friend groups had gone through that. And so nobody had a recommendation. So it was kind of like, okay, crapshoot time. And of course, nobody wants to do that with their loved one. I mean, we're talking about my parents and their dog and the home that they had bought in 1970. So it was like, holy crap. So thankfully, everything worked out fine. But just that stress of dealing with my mom, dealing with the hospital, dealing with finding in-home caregivers. And he wasn't great with the caregivers. My mom was actually really good with them. She went with the flow a lot better than I expected. So thankfully, he was just verbally obnoxious. And she was fairly compliant, maybe because she had somebody nice to talk to. I'm not really sure why or how that worked so well. But she was also still at the stage where she could, shower and dress herself for the most part. And, she didn't really need the care for the daily activities of living, like dressing and showering and toileting. But she needed somebody to cook for her and to make sure that, she didn't take it upon herself to drive my dad somewhere. We actually took his car and parked it at my house because he was annoyed because he wanted to demonstrate that he was capable of driving his car. And I was like, oh, no, you're not.
Boy.
I had ridden, so this was like January of 2017. I had gotten in the car with him in September. And my house at the time was up the hill from this restaurant. They had come over. Their doctors were in my town. So they came over after the doctor's appointment. My dad, so I'm like, okay. Scariest freaking mile drive I've ever had in my life. And I taught my daughter how to drive. So it was like, let's go here because we're not going any further than this neighborhood. It was terrifying. So it's like, it was challenging. You have to learn all these things like right this second. Not fun.
Yeah, and I think that in and of itself, I mean, having to go through hearing your stories, and I'm sure you've shared that particular story on your podcast, is probably so enlightening to your audience, because you're absolutely correct. Every day here at Home Instead, we get calls all the time, similar like, what do we do? How do we deal with this? And we're able to go ahead and provide some ideas. So I mean, the fact that you're out there sharing your stories, it definitely, hopefully, has made people take a step back and ask themselves, let me think about how I'm going to approach this, because that definitely tends to be the challenge. I just want to kind of transition really quick here because I think one of the things about this particular series that we're doing is taking what we've learned as being caregivers, whether it be, not necessarily the specific skills of caring, but some of the things like time management and, just taking on that additional responsibility. How did you leverage what you learned as a family caregiver to get this podcast off the ground?
Well, like I said, I've always been an entrepreneur, and back when podcasts were kind of new and you actually had to listen to them on your computer,
Mm-hmm.
I would listen to them while retouching portraits. Although a podcast playing and Photoshop running made the poor computer be like, so I kind of got out of the habit until they came out with podcast players. I got back into them in 2016, and I was listening to one called Side Hustle School because unfortunately technology is somewhat killing portrait photography, at least in California, which I know is really kind of surprising. And it's not all of California. Like there's pockets of the state and the country that still do really well. I had been doing that for about 25-ish years. And from the 2008 recession on, it was just a constant battle to get people in the door. And I was kind of looking for a change. And one of the podcasts called Side Hustle School had a bonus episode on starting your own podcast. And I listened to it and I thought, I could do that. It isn't hard to do the podcast, but it does require, there's a lot of back end stuff that you're not really aware of. And I've learned a lot of that stuff over the years, but because I had my own business before, it wasn't too terribly difficult. But there were times when my mom was still with us that there was a lot of juggling, and I'll never forget the day my husband and I are cyclists. I went out with our group, and most of them are retired. And so they're like, oh, we're going to go and ride some more and do some hills. And I'm like, no, I got to do a giant hill to get home. I'm cool. I got a lot of stuff to do. So I like literally went out. We did a pretty good ride. And I kind of peeled off a little bit early because I'm like, I got nothing on the schedule today. I could get a lot of stuff knocked out and just be ahead of the schedule. I got home, showered, dressed, the phone rings. It's my mom's doctor's office. And they're like, well, we can't really figure out why she's got blood in her urine. It's not a UTI. The doctor wants you to bring her in. It's 11:40. And I said, and it's a Friday. And I said, what is he looking for? I said, because I really don't exactly have today available for this. Oh, you don't? Like, no. I'm like, you've seen me. I'm not 70. It's like, I said, somebody has to help pay the bills. And they were just shocked. It was like their expectation was that I could just literally snap my fingers, pick up my mom, who lived about 15 minutes away, to bring her all the way back because her doctor was literally down the hill from my house. And, with no warning, the care staff turned over at 2:30. So we're talking like, you're like disrupting the whole system. So yeah. She finally, emails me, let's get a ultrasound. I had to drive my mom 20 miles away to get this ultrasound. It was like 6 hours, 13 phone calls to make this happen. And so one of the things that I learned is you have to stay. I was not letting that doctor's office jerk me around. I'm like, well, the thing is they call me at 11:40, so at noon when I'm trying to call them back, nobody's in the office. I'm like, I am so good for somebody, buddy. That's one of the reasons why I tell people, make a list of people that can help you, because, when the doctor's office or, my mom fell on December 30th, 2019. Last year was sort of one of those, nothing happened, so it's almost like an invisible year.
Yeah.
And it's just, sometimes you just need somebody to back you up. And being an entrepreneur, I didn't really have that. So it's a lot of juggling. And I was very grateful that she was in a very good care residence, because they were my team. We were all part of Mom's team. There's no way I could have done what I've done if my mom lived with us, or if I was constantly in charge of everything, help is important.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? I actually would like to touch on one thing that you just said, because, there's a lot of guilt that families have when it comes time to, think about moving mom into a memory care unit or moving your loved one into a memory care unit. How did you handle that? Did you have any pushback from other family members, or was everyone on board because they understood the scope of care change?
Well, thankfully, there was no pushback except for mom. My sister and I do not see the world at all the same, rarely agree on anything, and we agreed on that. There was a couple of
Wow.
years of miraculous agreement and cooperation that we have not had most of her life, and she just turned 50, so that's saying something. Originally, we had discussed, my aunt had taken care of her mom and my grandmother moved in with my aunt. My aunt and my grandmother lived on my grandmother's Social Security, and my aunt did all the caregiving. I'm not really sure why my mom's family, decided that was smart, because it certainly wasn't. Because when my grandmother died, guess what happened to my aunt's income? So my aunt is on welfare and subsidized housing for seniors. She's happy enough. She's got some of her own mental health issues. She's a
Mhm.
recovering, on again, off again, recovering alcoholic, so that's a challenge. But she's got some other challenges. And my
Mhm.
sister and I thought that if we hired like a daytime care person or two people to do the heavy lifting, then my aunt could live with my mom, and that would give my aunt a nicer place to live, a safer place to live,
Mhm.
and it would it would alleviate the need for 24/7 caregivers in the home, because holy Toledo, that is mind-boggling expensive, and that wasn't an option to move forward. And so
Mhm.
my sister and I are on the same page. And me, I'm I don't want to say I'm pessimistic, but I did take a moment to think about, well, okay, my mom is, I think she's 8 years, or was 8 years older than her sister, 8 or 11, I always forget.
Mhm.
And so chances are mom will go first. And then what? Now we've got mom's house and auntie is living in it for free. Okay,
Yeah.
so what kind of parameters? Okay, well, do we like find some other older adults to move in with my aunt and, kind of make it like a senior citizen boarding home until my aunt can get back on the subsidized housing? It's like all of a sudden I started realizing, like, this sounds like a giant volcano that could blow up in our face.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I went and looked at the memory cares in my area, and I fell
Mhm.
in love with the one that she was in. They let her keep her dog. When they said, "Oh, well, we could probably make arrangements for her to keep her dog," it was like, "Here's money. Take a deposit. What do you want? I'll bring her stuff to anything. What do you want? I don't want to deal with this," because my dog
Uh-huh.
hated her dog. So my aunt
And you
said,
have
"I don't."
you have two Goldens, right?
Yeah, one of them's right here on the couch snoozing away. I had three until
Okay.
last year, but yeah, I have two
Oh, I'm
Goldens.
sorry.
And then our aunt said, "No, I don't want to do that." Well, it's a good thing I looked at the care homes, because you know, now we're in another situation of, we were all on the same page, and then I jumped off the page, and then my aunt kicked my sister off the page. They were fantastic. But when we moved my mom in, that was the worst day of our life. The reason that
Mhm.
I decided that it was beneficial to my mom, because there was activities, there was things, there was safety measures, there was activities and things there she was not going to get living with me. She was not going to get living
Yeah.
with my sister. And, she would have been a burden. Not that I really want to use that term, but everybody worked. My sister's got kids, they're still in school. So how are we going to manage? I figured to keep doing my photography career, I would have to hire a caregiver to come into my house. And I'm like, this just doesn't sound really workable. And I could picture working with clients, because my studio was attached to my house, and my mom barging in. I'm just like, this is just sounding all bad. So the day
Yeah.
we moved her
Yeah.
in, there was a gentleman in his pajamas, very tall, skinny guy, and he had a stuffed animal stuffed down the back of his pants. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. I mean, I was literally about to have a meltdown. And of course, Mom did. Cried, sobbed, begged, pleaded, threatened. It was horrible. And then we had to leave her there. Ugh, that was awful.
Yeah.
But it took some time. It took about 6 weeks, slightly longer than the executive director thought it would, and less time than I thought it would. Initially, when I would show up for visits, she would literally just grab me and sobbing and crying like she'd just been released from hostage negotiations or whatever. It was horrible. I show up this one day, she's following this other woman down the hall, and my mom spots me and she goes, oh, come with me. I have to help my friend. And I still choke up when I say this. When she said that word friend, it was like somebody handed me $1 billion check. I was like, oh, thank God. She's finally acclimated. Thank God. And from that day forward, that was her home. She was happy. She had friends. My mom's name was Diane, and she had another friend named Diane. We called other Diane. And for a while there was other Diane. So there was the 3 Dianes, which is confusing enough, even if you've got, all your marbles intact. It's really hard to keep track. And they had the best time. And one of my favorite stories is my mom and other Diane, the original second Diane, however you want to call that. We were sitting in my mom's room, and my mom had a stuffed dog for whatever reason. I don't know where it came from. And my mom looks at it and she goes, I've had dogs all my life. And I was like, oh God, that story again. And before I can try to distract and like divert that story, because I've heard that story so many times, I don't need to hear it again. Not that it's likely since my mom passed away last year. But her friend says, you've told me that story 803 times. And I thought, well, that's a very specific number. About a month later, my mom launches into that story again. It's like, oh, this story's killing me. Her friend goes, oh, I know. And then she starts parroting it. And I thought, oh my God, this is like elder abuse, because this poor woman has heard this story so many times that despite Alzheimer's, she's remembering the story. So my mom had a friend, several friends, that did not care if you heard the same story 5,000 times a day. Whereas with me, I'd be like, oh, and as soon as you make that face, which is almost reflexive, my mom would get instantly angry. I mean, and she would do the same thing. If she said something, you'd be like, what did she say? If you made that scrunchy face, boom, fight. So she had friends. She had activities. She had actually kind of a little bit of a purpose, because she still spoke in full sentences, actual words. She was 100% mobile until 2.5 weeks before she passed away. She died because she fell and broke her leg, and her body said, that's it. And, she did things that she would not have had the opportunity to do if she'd lived with me. And so I did not feel guilty, because I knew it was the best thing for everybody. It's like, I think a lot of times families, I think we feel terrible. It's like, oh my God, my mom's got Alzheimer's. And you feel so badly because you can't fix it. You can't cure it. You can't make it better. And we forget that we all have lives we have to live. Sometimes I feel like a little, like, not guilty, but I feel kind of bad, because I tell people at some point you have to realize they're in the dying process, and you can't stop that, and don't try to shorten it, or not shorten, don't try to prevent it, because then you're just dragging it. Yeah, you're just dragging it out. So, it was a really good thing. And because they had the care staff that didn't have to deal with her 24 hours a day, they were much more compassionate than I know I could have been. So you have to be really honest with yourself. And I like to tell people, because I don't know very many people whose family member has had Alzheimer's for 20 years. I think that's way on the outside of average. And so I tell people, especially in the beginning, if you think you can do all this stuff yourself, I want you to do one thing for me. I want you to stop right now, This is June 4th, 2021. Please rub your crystal ball, and I want you to tell me what June 4th, 2041 is going to look like. I mean, I don't even know what June 2022 is going to look like, much less 20 years from now. I mean, you just have no, if we did not learn that life can throw several major curveballs all at once last year, well, you're never going to learn that one. So assume it's going to be a very, very long marathon. And if you're a marathon runner, which I am not, you need, there's support. There's people pass out water and orange slices. And I'm a cyclist, so I know what they give us at rest stops, but you know, there's support. So why do we think we can do Alzheimer's caregiving without support? We cannot.
You know what? That is very well said. And I think the whole idea of being honest with yourself is something that we all take for granted. And again, that's why I asked the question about the guilt, because, you know, there are a lot of family members who feel guilty, but ultimately it's about being honest with yourself and recognizing what you can bring to the table versus what a memory care or in-home care can bring to the table. And it really is about affordability. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'd like to go ahead and just hit one more question before we go to the audience questions. And really that's about caregiver burnout. And I think honesty with yourself is really kind of the whole, it's the whole thing that we all need to be in order to truly gauge whether we are, you know, taking care of ourselves. So if you can touch just a little bit about when you started realizing that caregiver fatigue was real, and, you know, a couple of the other things that you did to go ahead and help alleviate that fatigue.
Well, I've learned a lot from the guests that I have on my show. And I was really, really blessed last year. So my mom ended up in the hospital right as this COVID thing was starting. You know, before it was like something that was going on in China, and all of a sudden now my mom is in the hospital, and it's like, do I want her here? So it was right at the start of all this insanity that we've lived through. And I talked to a gentleman who does mindfulness. Now, I know I'm from Northern California. I'm not super far from Berkeley. I am not a woo-woo mindful person. And he taught me a trick where he said, you know, we're taught to push down our negative emotions, push down the anger, the fear, the sadness, and just muscle through. And that's really, really bad for us. And so he said, whenever you feel these emotions coming up, stop and say, well, hello, anger. Why are you here? And I thought, okay, that sounds like it might work for some people. So I'm literally walking across from the kitchen into the bedroom, and I am so stressed out. I'm trying to make a decision. Do I do the surgery to have my mom's leg repaired? Regardless, she's probably not going to be fully ambulatory. Anesthesia on somebody with a broken brain in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's. And I could literally just feel the emotions were just bubbling up, and I knew what was going to happen. I knew there was going to be an explosion. There was going to be an argument with the husband, because the dogs don't argue with me. And it was just going to, and this was like about 11:30 in the morning. So the day was still fairly fresh. And I knew it was just going to trash the whole day and the whole night. It was just going to be ugly. And I'm like, wait. He said, what? Okay. He said, stop. Hi, anger. Why are you here? And in that instant, I went, oh my God, it's because I just want to do the right thing for my mom. And it still makes me tear up, because literally in 30 seconds, I totally diffused myself and felt good about myself. So there's lots of techniques. And I learned this right at the beginning of the pandemic. Now I'm a planner. I like to know what's going on. I want to know, okay, X is happening, so I can do Y, you know, like plan. I make to-do lists. I like to scratch them off. That's how I roll. So obviously 2020 was like, forget you and your planning. I had to learn a lot of coping. Yeah, I mean, I hadn't seen, like, seriously, that story makes me like cry. It makes me feel silly, but it really worked. I was shocked. And so I tell people that story a lot. But just having to constantly adapt last year, adapt to my mom's in the hospital. This COVID thing seems real. Now she's back in the care home. She won't deal with the physical therapist. Now they won't let me go in. And now she's gone. And I don't, it was like literally one punch after the other. And, then all the business travel gets canceled. Our 2 weeks to Hawaii gets canceled. The same thing that happened to everybody else. And it just, at one point,
Yeah.
I'm like, I do not have any more coping techniques. And so I just had to keep really digging deep and saying, what do I need to do for me to get through another day? And I equate that to somebody that, that's caring for a family member at home. Maybe they don't get a lot of help. They can't afford in-home care, even short periods of time. You really have to take a minute. I mean, if it's in the shower, if you get up early when your loved one's still sleeping, and just take stock of what is going on physically, because stress is terrible for our brains. It's terrible for our bodies. And if we're stressed and tired and frustrated, we're not going to be very good caregivers. So we really, really have to listen to what our bodies are telling us. And so I managed to get through the spring and the summer. And, I don't know if you guys experienced it as much, but just about the time my husband and I were like, I think we could maybe go away for a weekend. It was in early September. You guys might remember when the sky was orange from the fire.
Oh, yeah.
It was like,
oh my goodness. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. Well, I think we're going to probably have that again this year since we had no rain. And it was just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I can't even get out of town. It's like, I like my town, but I'm sick of this town. And then, so we get through the early fall, and then the dog dies. This is the dog that was literally 85-pound stalker dog. It's laid on my feet, wrapped around my office chair. If I got up and went to the bathroom, he followed me, even though he was very severely arthritic in his back legs. And there was at one point, I just looked at my husband like, I'm out of coping techniques. Please leave me alone. Going in my office. I don't even know what I'm going to do. I might stare at the wall. And I had to remove myself from the world for a little while, just to kind of rebalance. And it was like literally last year was just like one hit after another. And it ended with, so in a 53.5-week span of time, lost my mom. Sorry, Luna, my favorite dog. And then my paternal grandmother passed away. Now, she was 103, so that was not terribly hard to deal with. But when you look back at 2020, it was like, oh my gosh, that was like 20 years of caring for my mom, all condensed into 1 year.
1 year, yeah, that is, oh my God.
I was trying to help other family caregivers because their systems of help and respite all got blown to smithereens. And I knew I was blessed. I'm like, I don't have to deal with my mom, thank goodness, because we'd go to the park and watch kids, and that wasn't an option last year. I had it easy because I didn't have to worry about her, but I had all these other people that I know that I had to worry about. So it was a challenge. And you really, really have to take stock into how you feel, because you do not want to be one of those caregivers that ends up hospitalized or gone before the person you're taking care of. And that does happen a lot.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen that happen many times where the family caregiver just really so focused on the health of their loved one that they totally neglect their own diabetes or high blood pressure or whatever it might be. And next thing you know, they're in the hospital, and who's caring for their loved one? So it's definitely a key thing that we must all focus on as family caregivers, honoring our emotions, listening to our bodies, and taking, as you said, taking stock of what's happening and making good decisions. So I want to go ahead, because I know we're almost at the end of our hour here, but I'd like to get some audience questions. But I'd like to get some audience questions in. So the first one that I have is, how do you handle outbursts when you are out and about with your mother? My mother has minor freakouts or forgets who I am when or where we're driving to, and I need sometimes to pull over in order to make it more tranquil.
Well, I wondered when I read that question if that only happened in the car. And
Yeah.
even if it doesn't exclusively happen in the car, the stimulation of things zipping by and maybe the movement of the car might just be overwhelming. It doesn't say what stage they thought she was in,
Mm-hmm.
but my thought is to give them one of those like fidget blankets or something to watch. Well, that would make me car sick. What else did I write down? I thought about this one because I did not happen have it with my mom. So, music, maybe if you sing along, it will distract from what's, I mean, if you think about the stimulation of what's going on outside the car, and,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to process when you're whizzing past the stores or whatever. So I think it's an overstimulation that's happening, kind of like when a toddler's overly tired and they just melt down and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
the heck? Thankfully, I didn't have that with my mom, but I got smart and didn't take her too far away because she'd start griping
Yeah.
about where are we going? It's like around the corner. It's like 3 minutes from
You know,
here.
that's so true. I agree with you 100% about the overstimulation. It's really about reading, understanding your loved one, and being able to go ahead and look for the cues that cause these triggers before the outbursts. It's really about, taking stock of what would be the overstimulation. And I agree with you 100% about the car, and being able to go ahead and really focus their attention onto something, so that way there is not that overstimulation. But if you're seeing that it's consistently occurring, car rides may not be, something to do for pleasure anymore. It may just be a utility of taking someone to a doctor's appointment. Thank you. Next question that was the one right after that. Did your mother ever forget who you were? And how do you process that? My father sometimes forgets who I am, and it scares me that he may someday fully forget me.
Well, as harsh as this is to hear, you'd be smart to accept the fact that it's likely going to forget who you are. Now, that's a little bit easy for me to say because I suspected that my mom was not remembering our relationship. I had lost 100 pounds, and so the person that she remembered did not resemble the person that was standing in front of her. So there was a huge physical difference in how I looked in 2005 or 8 to how I looked at 2013. And I suspected that she didn't quite put the two and two together. The first fall that she was in the memory care, they had a family caregiver Thanksgiving luncheon, and it just so happened to be on my birthday. So when I show up, she asked me the typical question, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Applying for a job, whatever. Just like that question was always so strange. And I said,
Yeah.
"Well, today's a special day and they're having a party. Do you remember why it's special?" And you got to be really careful when you ask questions because you could trigger negative emotions. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew she could handle what I was asking her because I was asking it pretty gently, I guess you might want to say. And she goes, "No, what's the occasion?" I said, "Well, today's November 17th. Do you remember why that's a special day?" "No." There you go. I had my confirmation right there. And I said, "Well, it's my birthday." "It is?" "Yes, it is." I'm like, "Let's go have some food. It looks really good." And I just let it go. I did not let her know that it bothered me. It didn't really because I did suspect. And then it was funny because she would tell everybody I was her best friend. "This is my best
Mm-hmm.
friend. I've known her forever." Yeah, no kidding. My forever. She'd tell that to the caregivers and they'd laugh because they knew. And that was fine,
Mm-hmm.
It's they may forget their relationship to you, that you are their son or their spouse or whatever, but if you have good visits and enjoyable moments with them, they will remember that you're a fun person. And I got that from my mom. Like I said, we always went out to the park or the pool or the library or wherever we could stalk down little kids to go watch. And I had flown back from Denver actually super early that morning because, you know, if anybody's flown through Denver, you know, you always get stuck there. And so I was really
Yeah.
tired, and I knew because I was tired, I thought, we're just going to stay in the care home. They had a beautiful courtyard. It was a gorgeous September afternoon. And she saw me and she goes, "Oh, hi, where are we going today?" And I'm like, okay, you remember that we go out all the time, but you can't remember my name.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she remembered that I was the fun friend, and you know, how can that be a bad thing?
Exactly. You know, I think that's the crazy part to me about any kind of cognitive disease like this, because the individual looks does it's not like cancer. It's not like any other kind of disease where you actually see physical wasting, maybe at the end stages of the disease. But I think that has been the biggest challenge for a lot of family caregivers is that mom looks the same. Mom's not functioning up here. And they take those for moments of forgetfulness as almost like a slight. And we always have to coach people and remind them, you know, it's the disease. And yes, I know that you cannot see the physical components of this disease, but it's there and it's real. And I agree with you completely about, you know, reimagining what the relationship's going to look like, because in all honesty, it's about those uh, visceral emotional connections that we have with someone that people keep through almost throughout the disease state. So you know it's really important, and I agree with you 100% on, you know, taking a moment to say, hey, you know what? I know she's going to forget who I am because I've done my homework about the disease, and I'm going to make every moment as a blessing as I possibly. Let's go ahead, and it looks like you know we're good. We got about 8 minutes. So do you mind a couple more questions?
Oh no, that's fine.
Okay, excellent. Let's see here. Let's see. We have this one here. How did you continue to live your life while caring for your mother? What stress relieving activities did you do to help? I find myself getting overwhelmed at times when it comes to balancing my day-to-day job. I'm a farm tech and caring for my mom. And I think you did touch on some of these, but I think the physical component is important to kind of stress.
Well, I part of the weight loss journey was discovering that exercise is not some sort of evil form of torture. And I learned, well, I thought that before. I learned that there is funny. Like I said, I'm a cyclist and I like to do spin. And now I'm one of those crazy Peloton people. There was one day I showed up in our spin class and I don't remember what was bugging me. Probably the husband, because it's always the husband, right? And I walk in. Now, the spin instructor was also my personal trainer, so she knew me really well. And I walk in, and she said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Nope, but I will be in an hour." And I pedaled so hard, I was drenched. And when I was done, I looked at my friends in the spin class and I said, "It's okay. I am no longer homicidal." And it was like literally, I was like, and I don't remember what was bugging me, but I remember the change from walking into that spin studio, wanting to just punch somebody. Thankfully, nobody said anything that irritated me enough to bring that out. And when I left, it was like, you know, like birds were singing around my head. It was just like, ah, I feel so much better. And my husband at the time was dealing with these banks and the insanity of the real estate crisis we had a decade ago. And I got him into
Mhm.
spin because I'm like, dude, by 8 o'clock in the morning, you're a stressed out wreck. You need to go burn that stress off. And
Yeah.
so, you know, if it's walking with your friends, cycling, you know, I did a kickboxing class right before the shutdown and my gym closed. And it was literally the long bag and punching and kicking it. I'm like, this is very therapeutic. I'm really liking this. So I don't have one of those here, but you know, there, find an outlet that releases the stress. Physical stress, generally you need to burn it off through exercise, and then maybe find something like I like to make handmade greeting cards. It's my pandemic hobby that I've kept, and it's very zen. And I listen to podcasts and I just make cards, and I can do it for hours. And it fills my soul back up. So you need to find ways to relieve the stress and fill up yourself with things that make you happy. Obviously, if people are taking care of a parent, don't have all weekend to make cards like I do, but sure you can something. Cooking.
Yeah. No. Great advice. Great advice. One last question before we get ready to close the event. Did your mother have trouble, or did your loved one have trouble accepting help from you? I find my father getting offended when I offer to assist him in his day-to-day activities.
My dad was terrible with that. It was obvious that caring for her was becoming a strain for him. And so I did all the research to find an adult day program, which was across town past the high school, the middle school, and the junior college or the community college. So it wasn't super convenient to get there early in the morning. And he just refused, absolutely refused. I'm like, I'm trying to help. So he did not do himself any favors by not at least considering it, or, playing along and making me feel better about things. But what happened with my mom in the last 10 months of her life, she got much more combative. And this is a really weird thing with Alzheimer's, because she needed so much more help. And the more help she needed, the more she didn't think she needed help. And so what happened with her, it took 2 people to give her a shower. I'm sure that was not fun. I know it wasn't fun, because she'd also scratch people. And they said that she reached for her clothes and slipped and landed on her knee and broke her tibia. I know my mom well enough that she went and reached for her clothes and fell, and that was the end of that. So yes, it's very difficult, and I think people need to be aware that your loved one might stay passive and mellow and just zen all the way to the end, but that may not be the case, and you may have to bring in help, or you may have to go to a memory care residence, because you may have to do it just for your safety and theirs.
Yeah, agreed. Well, you know what? Before we get end here, let me just ask Sam. Sam, is there anything that just came in recently?
One final question that you touched on it is, how do you deal with someone needing help washing in the shower when they don't want to?
Oh, okay. So that one came up again. So what were some of your tips to helping in the shower, since we brought that one up right now?
That's true. That was the first question that somebody sent into you.
Yeah.
One of my guests has frontal temporal dementia, which is very interesting, because she's 100% aware of the fact that she's declining and progressing, and it's really strange. Like, my mom didn't have a clue, but this gal does. And she said, and I had heard this, that the water hitting their skin can feel like needles. And this gal confirmed that. She's like, I do not take regular showers. I wash my hair in the sink in the kitchen, and I use rinseless wipes on my body, because she said, I can't deal with the shower. It's actually really painful. And just recently, they got a grant where they redid the shower for her, and it's got the handheld shower, and it's got a little seat, and she liked that in the beginning, but she gets in there and she says it's just overwhelming. And I think what's happening is, most showers are like one color. They're white walls, or the tile is all very similar, and you got the water hitting you. So we're like talking that overstimulation thing again. And then some of the tips that I learned, I only had to actually physically shower my mom once, and we've been at the pool. So I was like, oh, didn't you want to clean up before dinner? Because, we were in the water and sticky and yucky, and you wanted to wash that all off, right? And she was like, I did. And I'm like hustling her into the bathroom. And I washed her hair, and she actually enjoyed it. So I think slowing down, making it seem like it's their idea. They don't need a shower every day, so just to forget that. You know, maybe you could get one good shower with the hair washing a week, use some rinseless wipes other days.
Yeah.
And if modesty is a problem, you know, like if you have to take care of your dad, like if I had to take care of my dad, one of the things I learned too is to like wrap a towel around them. It helps them keep warmer. It also helps, you know, a little with the modesty, and then just wash one body part at a time.
Yeah.
And the other thing that somebody suggested was make it very spa-like. This one gal would go in, turn on the shower, get all the products out, the fluffy towels, get the bathroom all warmed up. Then she'd get her mom up to use the toilet, because that's what most of us need to do first thing in the morning. And the shower's running, and all of that was like muscle memory. And so her mom would get in the shower. So that worked for her. So there's a lot of tricks, but remembering that, I mean, when my friend Janice basically said, you know, the shower is overwhelming, the water hitting my skin is painful. I mean, why would you want to take a shower if it felt painful and was overwhelming?
Exactly, exactly. And you know, again, these things are things that we don't even think about when it comes to the, you know, the mind and how we perceive stimulation, whether it be from a tactile event like taking a shower, or, you know, visually as if we're driving in a car. So yeah, these things are great. I mean, experience, and with respect to modesty, absolutely. I mean, I know when I was giving my grandfather giving him bed baths, we always made sure that we had him wash his private areas the best that he could, and always kept them covered with a towel. So that way there was always that sense of modesty.
Because
So, well,
as an adult, you
go
don't
ahead,
really
Jim.
want, sorry, as an adult, you don't want somebody washing your body, much less your intimate areas. So why would
Mhm.
somebody, just because their brain is damaged, why would, you know, that's a challenging one. And that's
Oh,
ultimately my mom fighting the caregivers is what caused her. I mean, I made sure her death certificate said she died from Alzheimer's because I wanted it to be accurate. And it did.
yeah.
She died from lack of eating and drinking because of advanced Alzheimer's, is essentially what it said.
Wow. Well, you know, you're just such an impressive woman, and
Thank
you know,
you.
I want to thank you so much for sharing your story, and working to bring a lot of resources to the table for your podcast listeners. I just want to give you, Jennifer Fink, a shout out in your podcast, Fading Memories, which I guess you can go ahead and get access to on Spotify or iTunes or any of the other, however you get your podcasts. So
Exactly.
please take a listen. Please take a listen to this, especially if you're a family caregiver who's either new to the whole experience of your loved one just getting diagnosed with some kind of cognitive impairment, or you've been around the block and you could, you know, definitely take some advantage of these things. And then, of course, your Instagram and your Facebook pages are also available there. And we'll go ahead and put that in the chat as well for our listeners and viewers today. So again, thank you so much, Jennifer. And thank you all for participating today in our Kickstarting Your Healthcare Career Through Caregiving. And we wish you all the best. Thank you so much. Dr. Greg Sanchez here with Home Instead Pasadena. If you're interested in learning more about Home Instead as an in-home care support, we're available at 626-486-0800. Thank you so much. Take care now.
Bye. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.